And it's a good morning to the Gelding and the Sportsfan radio viewers, and that's racing viewers as well. Gelding, some rain on the way. I believe it's already reached you in Caulfield, and Caulfield races today. We suggest that punters take some care with their selections.
Good morning, Professor. Good morning, listeners. Professor, I apologise for my voice. I've got a bit of the lurgy at the moment, mate. So a bit croaky. So we'll just see how we go. Caulfield today. Caulfield races. Bit worried about a few facts, Professor. It's raining here now. Rain's predicted all day. The effect that'll have on the track, we're not too sure of. Whether how much water the track staff have put on it compared to how much rain we get. So I notice on the TAB side at the moment, it's a good fall, but, we'll keep a watch on that during the day, Professor. Also worried about, there was some rather strong winds around Caulfield last night. Still here today. Now, and heavy winds are predicted with this rain. So if the horses are running into that wind, Professor, it may be good to get some cover. However, the rail's out 12 metres, Professor, which seems to suit on-pace horses. Now, the rail's been off a bit the last couple of runs at Caulfield. So a few worrying things, Professor, but look, all we do, as we do always, these tips are made well in advance of the race. We're looking for winners for the viewers. However, please look at what's happening on the track, whether it's favouring back markers or front runners, or if it's gone from a good track to a slow track. Take that into considerations, and all we can do is hope for the best and, tip out some winners that we hope the listeners can follow. Like last week, if I had followed us, Professor, a winning day.
Yeah, 50% win rate, and the Professor's parlay got up.
Yep, both parlays.
Exactly right, Gelding. So it was a fairly successful day, and I'll speak a little bit more about that later in the program. Much to our delight and GM Racing's delight.
Yes, Professor, always good.
All right, Gelding. There's a 10-race card today. The first at 11:20, the last at 4:40 p.m. So you'll be home in time for the news. As you said, Gelding, the rail's out 12 metres. If the jockeys take it too wide, they'll be able to high-five the members of the public who are standing close to the rail if they venture out into the rain. And if they take it too wide, Gelding, they'll be on the train line.
They might be on the Express to Mordialloc, Professor. Who knows? Look, it's a fair wide. It's out fairly wide, Professor. And, of course, we've got fairly big fields today too. So, look, some horses may have, may be caught up in it. But let's try and find a couple of winners, Professor. I'm going late in the program, so, Professor, I've looked for horses with hopefully be able to handle the wet. So let's hope so. Now, my first tip is race 8, number 1, Fleetwood. This horse is a Godolphin trained horse. Jane Cummins to ride, Damien Lade to ride. Professor, this horse is coming down from Sydney for the Blue Army. It's won its last 2 starts. It's won 4 starts, a second and a third, Professor, from 9 starts. Last start up at Randwick at won a benchmark 78. But what really caught my eye about this Fleetwood, Professor, is that in that benchmark 78, it beat a horse called the Black Cloud. Now,
that name's familiar, Gelding.
As you saw last week, Professor, we made Black Cloud the bet of the day. it didn't let us down. Heard Joe Pride talk after that race. He's talking the Black Cloud up as a group horse. And it'll be back after an impressive win. So if this 3-year-old Gelding Fleetwood, it beat it by a length and a half, Professor, which is quite a comfortable winning margin. So if it can run like that today, certainly got to be in with a good chance, Professor. So first tip for the day, I like race 8, horse 1, Fleetwood, round about the 250 mark, Professor. So one there, hoping can add to our parlays. But yes, race 8, number 1, Fleetwood. Then going in the last, Professor, a very open race. Again, Professor, a 10-race program. You know, what are they doing? Really? 10 races. I thought they were dropping back to 9, but no, they get a bit greedy, these clubs. But we're obviously not as greedy as Sydney, Professor, where there's an 11-race program. First race starts at 10:30. Ridiculous. So, yes. Sorry, Professor, just having someone would try to ring you, of course, when you come on the screen. So my second tip is race 10, horse 6, Chortle Lane, Kieran Martrain, Celine Gaudry, the apprentice rides, claims 1.5 kilos off its 54.5 kilos, Professor. This horse, we've backed it before. It's done well for us. Happy to continue backing it, Professor. Won its last 2 races. On the track, it's had 2 starts for a win and a second. Yeah, so I don't know. Look, it's won a barrier trial. Coming back from a spell of 4th of May, a short break. 10 starts for 5 wins, Professor. 2 seconds, 2 thirds. It's won a trial. First up, 4 starts for 3 wins and a second. At the good each way odds of around $2.50, Professor. So, you know, they're both pretty short, but with figures like that, I'm quite happy to back Chortland Lane in race 10, horse number 6. So my 2 are race 8, number 1, Fleetwood, into race 10, number 6, Chorlton Lane, Professor. And you like?
Yeah, I'm going a little bit earlier than you, Gelding. First one I'm having a go at is race 2, the Bet with Mates handicap. It's a benchmark 84 for fillies and mares over 1,100 metres. I like a horse in this race that we've been on before, Gelding. Number 5, Miss Icelandic, coming out of barrier 2. Had only the 11 starts for 5 wins and 3 placings, so a good record there. 45% win rate, 73% place rate, so it ticks a couple of our boxes there. It's coming off a spell, Gelding. Its last race was at Morfettville. It was a listed race and it wasn't disgraced there, so it's back in class today. It's won first up previously. It's won over the distance. It's won at the track, so there ticks a few more boxes. Very good each way odds here, Gelding. $6 and $1.90 at the moment you can get.
Oh, I like it, Professor. Trained by Gavin Bridgewood, and look, I think it ran fairly well in a trial the other day down the other week. So yes. Maybe a nice little go, Professor.
Yeah, and Ben Allen's in the saddle, Gelding. He's in career form. His career win rate 12%, but over the last 50, he's striking at 20%, Gelding. So I like that. If he's in the saddle, I'm pretty happy with that today. And watch for Miss Icelandic to get a jump on the rest. Her pattern of racing is to lead from the start. So it might not be such a bad day if the conditions close in for her to be leading as they come into the home turn.
And has got that little W next to its name, Professor.
Exactly, Gelding. So race 2, horse 5, Miss Icelandic. And then I'm going to race 6, Gelding, the Lamaro's Hotel Handicap. You and I would have had a beer in a Lamaro's Hotel at some stage, wouldn't we?
Oh, which one, Professor?
Ooh, well, there's a couple in South Melbourne.
Yeah, beautiful.
I think they now own Bell's Hotel, don't they?
I'm not too sure. I think they might.
Yeah, well, if they do, then certainly I've had one there. I know
Yeah,
that. Um,
beautiful.
you'd be pretty safe. Most of the hotels in Melbourne I've had a beer at Gelding, so I've probably got the field covered.
Oh, don't make me laugh, Professor.
This is a benchmark 84 Gelding over 1,200 metres. Like this one, Gelding, horse 15, Barrackeel, coming out of barrier 9. 3 wins from 3 starts. So
Can't do
100%
any
win
better.
and place rating. Gelding, a very lightly raced 5-year-old, though, for only 3 starts. Didn't start racing until it was a 4-year-old. And another thing I like about Gelding, everybody wants a...
Schnitzel.
That's right, everybody wants a schnitzel.
So it's not the Seamus Award, the half schnitzel.
No,
it's the full
we've gone the full
schnitzel,
schnitzel today, not the half schnitzel.
Right, okay. And you're one of your favourite jockeys again.
Yes, Gelding. This one's coming up through the classes. I believe it's a higher rated horse than it shows at the moment, and I think it should have this field covered. And you're right, Ben Allen's in the saddle again, and it's trained by the Corstons, and they're in career form, Gelding. Over their career, a 12% win rate. Over the last 50, 18%. So we've got a jockey in form, trainers in form. Very happy about that. Showing $3.40 and $1.55. So I think I'll take that, Gelding.
Oh, Professor, I like it. It's a nice bet. It's obviously being a 5-year-old only had 3 starts. The horse has obviously had some problems. So, but if the Corsons have waited for it, it's obviously shown them some ability, Professor. So, as you said, it's by Schnitzel. So, extremely well bred. And as a, is it a Gelding, Professor? I think it
Yes, it's a 5-year-old Gelding.
So, hopefully the owners are getting some good reward for it now, Professor.
Yes, Gelding. So my 2 are race 2, horse 5, Miss Icelandic, race 6, horse 15, Barrackeel. Now let's turn to the very successful Professor's Parlay. Over the last few weeks, we've resurrected the Parlay, Gelding. We've gone from under 50%. We're now striking at 13 out of 25, so we're back up to 52%. We're above the Plimsoll line. I'm very happy about that.
Beautiful. As I said many times, Professor, if you've got a win rate over 30%, you're doing very well. So when you're having 3 bets and you're over 50%, that's a magnificent return for money, Professor. So I would like to see what your return of investment would be.
All right, Gelding. So the Black Cloud was successful and saluted last week. Very happy about that. Paid $3.50 and $1.70. Essendon beat West Coast after a couple of heart flutters.
Yes.
And then Freo put Gold Coast to the sword by the end of the game. So I haven't told you this, Gelding. I only had a look at it this morning. The win parlay paid $27.10. The place parlay paid $13.15. So for our investment of $10, we returned a $40.25 bonus.
Oh, Professor, I'd be checking your front door and be looking for paper bags. I hope you after tipping like that, I'm sure Schooner and maybe Mr. Deligan may have escorted you out Wednesday night and paid for you.
Oh, if only, Gelding, if only. All right.
Wasn't their treat?
Sorry, Gelding?
It wasn't their treat.
No, it wasn't their treat. No.
You've won money for them and they haven't treated you.
Well, I don't know whether they're on the parlays or not, Gelding. So the win parlay actually paid 11-2, which is tremendous.
Fantastic.
And the place parlay paid just better than 5-2.
Fantastic, Professor. Well done.
All right, let's try and do it again today. The agreed bet of the day between you and I, Gelding, is race 8, horse number 1, Fleetwood, for all the reasons that you mentioned earlier in the program. And let's parlay that into the Western Bulldogs to beat North Melbourne. The Western Bulldogs 11th. They've won 7 from 14. They need this one to consolidate a place in the 8, Gelding. Their average points 495.7, and I'll explain why that's relevant. North Melbourne, lucky last on the ladder, only won 1 from 14. They've come close a couple of times, Gelding, but I think the Western Bulldogs will be too good at Marvel today. Average points 4 for the Kangaroos, Gelding, 70.2, but the tail is in the average points against, 110.8. So
wow.
I think the Bulldogs will be able to kick a winning score against them today. The bookies don't like North Melbourne either, Gelding. It's 39.5, so just over 6 goals they're offering, which is a fair head start in any sporting contest. And we'll parlay that into Carlton to beat Richmond. Unfortunately, your Tigers not having a great season, Gelding. 17th at the moment, only won 2 from 14. The big problem is with their average points for and against, Gelding. Their average points for, only 63. So they're just kicking just a little bit better than 10 goals a game. That's not going to win many games of AFL. 99.7 against, Gelding. That's the tail of the tape.
Yeah. Professor, look, I agree with you completely. Lynch is out. So without your $1 million key forward, you're certainly not going to be kicking goals. And unfortunately, these days, we're not seeing much of Lynch actually out on the park.
No,
in
that's the big problem.
2 years. So, when you're missing your key forward and a few key retirements, Professor, unfortunately, we've had our glory. It might be time for a bit of pain, I think.
Yeah, it might well be, Gelding. And Carlton, they're second on the ladder. They're having a great season. They've won 10 from 14. I like their average points for, Gelding, 97.5. It's one of the best in the league. They're doing very well. And I can't. And the bookies don't like Richmond. 41.5, just under 7 goals head start, Gelding. I think it might be a cold, wet one for you at the MCG tomorrow.
Yes, Professor, we'll be going out there and still barracking and supporting Richmond. But look, I'm thinking Kerno and Mackay might have a bit of a day out tomorrow, Professor.
They may well do, Gelding. The win parlay currently showing 3-1, which is terrific odds, and the place parlay currently showing 3-2.
Yeah, and Professor, the good thing, we follow certain sides and we follow them with passion and we like them and that. But when we're picking for this show, we try to take that out of it and look for winners for the listeners. So even though you're a Melbourne supporter, I'm a Richmond supporter, we have stables that we like. We try to put that all aside, and all we're doing is trying to find winners for the listeners.
Exactly, Gelding. They're our thoughts exactly. Well, Gelding, the rain's pouring down here. I imagine it's pouring down there as well. So once more, we'll say to the punters, make sure you keep track of the races as you go and try and pick up what the patterns of racing are, because that will certainly tell what bets you should place during the day. All right, Gelding, that's enough from us. Until next Saturday, and that's racing. It's good luck.
And good punting.